The owner of this phone was involved in a serious car accident a few minutes ago. Are you his wife or a relative? The news hit Angela like a thunderbolt. For a few moments, she couldn't speak or react. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? The stranger on the phone asked when she didn't respond. Is this a prank? Angela finally managed to ask, standing up as her voice trembled. Madam, you need to come to Underbridge and see for yourself. The sound of a car horn signaled their father's arrival. Daddy's home! The children screamed excitedly as they dashed out of the sitting room to welcome him. Their father had been away on a business trip for the past 3 days. Be careful, girls. You don't want to fall, their mother, Angela, called out with a smile. She was a beautiful young woman in her early 20s. Following them outside, she watched as they ran across their lovely compound. Ciara, 8 years old, and her 10-year-old sister Winnie couldn't wait for their father to park so they could hug him and ask for the gifts he brought. James, their father, was a wealthy businessman, 35 years old, dealing in car parts. He parked his car and stepped out, a big smile on his face. With his arms wide open, the girls rushed into his embrace, and he lifted them up happily. How are my babies doing? James asked, his voice full of warmth. I missed you so much, Dad, Ciara said, giving her father a kiss on the cheek. You mean, we missed him so much, Winnie, her older sister said, rolling her eyes dramatically. Stop making it sound like you're the only one who missed Daddy. And what stopped you from saying it yourself? It's not like I was holding your tongue, Ciara shot back. All right, girls, that's enough, James said with a small laugh. Daddy missed you both so much. And guess what? I brought lots of gifts for my 2 princesses. You can go get them from the trunk. Yay! The girls cheered, rushing off excitedly to get the gifts. With the girls gone, James finally had a moment to notice his beautiful wife standing at the entrance, watching him with a smile as he interacted with their children. He opened his arms wide for her, and she walked into his embrace. Welcome home, honey, she said softly. James inhaled her familiar baby fresh scent and smiled. You smell like home, babe. I missed you and the girls so much, he whispered into her ear, pressing a soft kiss on her cheek. Angela giggled, wrapping her arms around his neck. Me and the girls, who did you miss more? She asked playfully. James glanced around before leaning in with a mischievous smile. Of course, I missed you more. Angela laughed softly, rolling her eyes. I know you don't mean that. I wouldn't dare lie to my beautiful wife, he said with a grin. Satisfied, Angela nodded happily. All right then. So, how was your trip? James let out a deep sigh at her question. Don't even go there. It was super hectic, and to make things worse, the goods I was expecting still didn't arrive. They told me to wait until tomorrow, but I couldn't stay another day. I missed my family too much. Angela was about to respond when their children's argument caught her attention. Daddy, I told Ciara this toy is mine, but she keeps dragging it with me, Winnie complained. That's not true. I picked it first, Ciara argued back. Girls, take those toys inside now, Angela scolded, giving Ciara a playful glare. What did I tell you about arguing with your sister? Ciara pouted and slowly moved closer to her father. Baby, let them be, James said, stepping in as he lifted Ciara into his arms. Sweetheart, don't argue with your big sister. I got plenty of presents for you, all right? Let's all go inside. Dinner will be ready soon, and you, baby, need to take your bath, Angela said. Together, they walked into their beautiful mansion. James left the children in the well-furnished sitting room and went upstairs to freshen up, while Angela busied herself in the kitchen, preparing dinner for her husband. Exactly 30 minutes later, James came downstairs, fully dressed and ready to eat, when his phone rang. "Hello, who's this?" he asked as he answered the call. "Sir, I'm calling from the shipping company. Your goods have just arrived, and we need your signature before we can offload them," a male voice informed him. James's expression changed slightly. He had been looking forward to resting and spending time with his family, but this call was urgent. "Can't it wait?" he asked. "I'm afraid it can't, sir. We just need your signature, and it won't take much of your time," the voice replied. "All right, I'll be on my way," James said, before ending the call. "Dad, are you going out again?" Winnie asked, looking up at him with innocent eyes. James smiled and crouched down to her level. "Baby, Daddy needs to step out for a little while, but I'll be back in 30 minutes. "But you just got back from a long trip," Chiara added, pouting. James was about to reply when his wife stepped out of the kitchen and said, "Dinner is ready, everyone." "Mommy, Daddy is going out again," Chiara said loudly. Angela immediately stopped what she was doing and walked into the sitting room. "Honey, where are you going? You just got back from a trip," she asked, looking confused. James let out a deep sigh and stood up. "I just got a call that my container has arrived. They need my signature, so my workers can offload the goods." "Can't it wait? You need to eat first," Angela said. James shook his head. "If I eat now, I won't have the strength to drive. Don't worry, baby. I just need 30 minutes since I'm driving there myself." Angela's expression changed slightly. She knew her husband was working hard for their family, but sometimes it made her sad. "All right, but you only have 30 minutes. The girls and I will be waiting so we can all eat together," she said. "Thank you, my love," James said with a smile. He gave her a quick kiss on the lips, pecked his daughters, then grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "Don't take too long," Angela called after him. "I won't," he replied as he walked out. "Girls, while we wait for your dad, let me help you with your schoolwork. Go and get it," Angela told her daughters. They both ran upstairs to fetch their assignments, while Angela sat on the sofa, picked up her phone, and started scrolling through her Instagram feed. A few seconds later, the girls returned with their schoolwork, and she began helping them. 30 minutes later, her phone rang. Seeing it was her husband, Angela smiled and picked it up. "He really kept to time," she muttered before answering the call. "Baby, why aren't you back yet?" she asked casually. But to her surprise, a strange voice answered instead of her husband's. "The owner of this phone was involved in a serious car accident a few minutes ago. Are you his wife or a relative?" The news hit Angela like a thunderbolt. For a few moments, she couldn't speak or react. "Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?" the stranger on the phone asked when she didn't respond. "Is this a prank?" Angela finally managed to ask, standing up as her voice trembled. "Madam, you need to come to Underbridge and see for yourself," the voice replied before the call ended. The phone slipped from Angela's hand as she stood frozen, feeling like the world was spinning around her. She couldn't hear a thing, not even when her children kept asking her what was wrong. All she could hear was, "The owner of this phone was involved in a serious car accident." Angela's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as a cold shiver ran down her spine. Her legs felt weak, and the room around her blurred as if the walls were closing in. "No, this can't be happening." Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, drowning out the voice on the other end of the line. A tear slipped down her cheek as her lips parted, but no words came out. "James." The name barely formed in her mind before the overwhelming fear erupted from her chest. She let out a piercing scream, the kind that could shake the heavens. Without thinking, She turned around and dashed out of the house, barefoot, her mind only focused on one thing, getting to him. Her daughters stood frozen, their innocent eyes wide with shock. They didn't understand what was happening, but one thing was certain. Something was terribly wrong. Little did they know that their happy and wealthy life was about to take a terrible turn. Their worst nightmare had just begun. Angela rushed to the accident scene and froze in shock. Her husband's car was completely crushed. A big trailer had lost its brakes and crashed into several cars. His was one of them. Worst of all, he had been inside when it happened. She couldn't believe it. Just moments ago, she was with him, and now he was gone. Forever. The shock was too much for her. Her legs gave way, and she fainted right there on the road. People gathered around, some trying to comfort her. A few helped carry her to the hospital, while others took her husband's remains to the mortuary. Meanwhile, back at home, the two children were very worried about their parents. They were also hungry, since it was already getting dark, and they hadn't eaten dinner yet. As the older sibling, Winnie took her sister to the dining table and served the food their mother had left for them. They ate quietly, while still waiting for their parents to come home. The night grew darker, but their mother and father were still not back. Something didn't feel right. "Winnie, do you think Daddy got into an accident?" Kiara asked fearfully. "Don't talk like that. Daddy and Mommy are fine and will be back soon," Winnie assured her younger sister, pulling her into a hug. But deep down, she was still afraid. Their mother wouldn't have rushed out like that unless something was really serious. Suddenly, Winnie remembered the emergency phone their mother kept at home. She quickly went to get it from her parents' room and dialed her father's number, but it was unavailable. She kept trying until she got tired, then decided to call her mother instead. But no one answered. At that moment, a deep fear crept into Winnie's heart. She started to worry that something terrible had happened. "Dear Lord, please don't let anything happen to our parents," the little girl prayed silently in her heart. Back at the hospital, Angela slowly opened her eyes, looking around the room in confusion. She had just dreamed that her husband was in a terrible car accident and died on the spot. The memory of it gave her chills. She tried to sit up, but that's when she noticed the drip attached to her arm. Suddenly, it all came rushing back. She wasn't dreaming. It was real. Her husband was really gone. But how? Angela's eyelids fluttered as fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. She sobbed uncontrollably, her cries catching the attention of another patient lying at the far end of the room. The woman knew Angela had been brought in after collapsing from the shock of her husband's death. "I'm so sorry for your loss, my dear. God knows best," the woman said gently, trying to comfort her. "Don't talk to me about God," Angela snapped, her grief turning into anger. Without thinking, she yanked the drip from her arm and ran out of the room, screaming her husband's name. Her cries echoed through the hospital, drawing the attention of several nurses on night duty. "Ma'am, please try to calm down," they pleaded, looking at her with sympathy. "You need to be strong." One of the nurses stepped forward. "Ma'am, your phone has been ringing for a while now," she said, handing it to Angela. "I think your children are calling." At the mention of her children, Angela suddenly remembered that she had left her two young daughters at home alone. Fresh tears streamed down her face as she thought about what to tell them. They were still waiting for their father. She wiped her tears and answered the call. The moment the line connected, her older daughter's voice came through. "Mommy, why aren't you home? Is Daddy okay?" Hearing her daughter's voice made Angela cry even more. She still couldn't believe her husband was gone. How could she possibly tell her daughter the truth? "Mommy, are you there?" Winnie's voice came through again. Angela sniffed back her tears and nodded, even though her daughter couldn't see her. Yes, baby, everything is fine. Just eat with your sister. Mommy will be home soon, she said, forcing herself to sound calm. But Winnie was a smart girl. Even as a child, she could sense that something was wrong. Mommy, you can tell me. I can handle it, she insisted. My baby. Angela's heart broke all over again. She burst into tears, but the nurses held her tightly, trying to comfort her. Mommy will tell you everything once I get home. Just take care of your sister, okay? She managed to say between sobs. Okay, Mommy? Winnie replied, and the call ended. Angela took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Then she looked up and asked, Where is my husband? The head nurse sighed and spoke gently. His body has been taken to the mortuary. I advise you to inform both your family and his so that you can start preparing for the burial. She truly felt sorry for Angela, but life wasn't always fair. Can I see him? Angela asked quietly. The head nurse gave a small nod. Follow me. Angela took a deep breath, tightened her grip on her gown, and followed the older woman out of the room. As Angela walked out, her heart felt heavy. She was confused and didn't know what to do. Never in her wildest dreams did she think she would become a widow at such a young age. Losing her husband in the blink of an eye, it felt like something that only happened in movies, not in real life. Another painful thought weighed on her. She had no family to turn to in this difficult time. She was an orphan, and her relatives never cared about her. She also knew that her husband's family never really liked her. We're here, the head nurse said, snapping Angela out of her thoughts. Angela nodded, biting her lips hard to stop herself from crying out loud. This couldn't be real. Her James was still on his way home. He couldn't be the one lying in that room. Nurse, am I dreaming? Angela suddenly turned to the head nurse, grabbing her by the clothes. That man inside, he's not my husband, right? This can't be real. The head nurse's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know what to say, so she simply pulled Angela into a hug, letting her sob in her arms. What words could possibly make this any easier? Losing a partner is the worst kind of pain anyone can go through. The head nurse understood that pain too well. She had experienced it herself. Her husband had also died young, leaving her alone to raise 5 children. Shh! Everything will be okay, my dear. You just have to stay strong, the head nurse said softly, patting Angela's back. The pain will fade with time. Just be strong for your children. James can't leave me like this, Angela cried. He knew I had no one else but him? Who will take care of my children and me? At that moment, that was the only thought in her mind as she wept. My dear, you need to be strong. I know it's not easy, but right now, that's your only choice, the head nurse said gently. After crying for a while, Angela nodded and slowly pulled away from the nurse's embrace. Though she was still shaking, she gathered the courage to take a step forward and entered the mortuary. But the moment her eyes fell on the lifeless, disfigured body of her once vibrant and handsome husband, she felt like fainting. She fought to stay on her feet. I can do this, she told herself, trying to hold back the unbearable pain. James, why are you lying here like this? This isn't what you promised me, she whispered, staring at his lifeless body. If you stay here, what will happen to me and the girls? What will I tell them? How will I handle this? James, you can't be this cruel to me. Her legs gave way, and she sank to the floor. James, tell me this is a joke. Please, tell me it's just a prank, she sobbed. The head nurse quickly rushed in and helped her up, but Angela struggled against her grip. Nurse, please tell my husband to wake up. Tell him our daughters are waiting for him. Please, we can't let him go yet. My dear, it's okay. It's okay. Just be strong, the nurse whispered, holding her tightly as Angela broke down again. Angela shook her head desperately. Nurse, I'm scared. I can't do this. My husband was all I had. How am I supposed to manage without him? The head nurse sighed, feeling deep sympathy for her. It took a long time to calm Angela down, but when nothing else worked, she had to give her a mild sedative to help her sleep and rest for a while. Once Angela finally drifted off, the head nurse turned to one of the younger nurses. Bring me her phone, she instructed. A few minutes later, the nurse returned with Angela's phone. Just as the head nurse took it, the screen lit up with an incoming call. The caller ID read, My Princess. The head nurse guessed it must be one of Angela's children, so she answered the call. As soon as she heard the little girl's voice, her heart ached even more for the grieving mother. Mummy, when will you and Daddy be back? We're scared of staying alone. The head nurse took a deep breath and tried to sound calm. Your mummy will be home soon. I will bring her myself. Can you tell me your home address? There was a short silence before Winnie asked cautiously, Who are you? I'm your mummy's friend, the nurse replied gently. Auntie, are my mummy and daddy okay? The little girl asked again, her voice filled with worry. The head nurse looked at Angela, who was fast asleep, but still had dried tears on her face. She let out a deep sigh, unsure of how to answer. Your parents are fine, the head nurse assured her. After getting the address, she, along with a few nurses, carefully carried the sleeping Angela to her car. Then, she drove toward the location Winnie had given her. Within a few minutes, she arrived at the house. As soon as the gateman opened the gate, she drove in. She was surprised to see two little girls sitting outside, waiting for their parents. They looked so small and innocent, their eyes filled with hope. Her heart ached for them. It was almost midnight, yet they were still awake, waiting for their parents. It showed how much they loved and cared for them. The head nurse, Jennifer, silently said a prayer, asking God to help her find the right words to break the news, gently without hurting their little hearts. Even the gateman looked worried. He quickly closed the gate and rushed toward the car, expecting to see his madam and Olga. But instead, he was surprised to see an older woman in her late 40s stepping out in a nurse's uniform. Winnie and her sister ran to the car as soon as it stopped, hoping to see their parents. But when they saw a stranger instead, they were confused. Still, they remained polite. Auntie, good evening. Are you the one I spoke to on the phone? Winnie asked. The head nurse squatted to their level and gave them a warm smile. Yes, my name is Auntie Jennifer, and I brought your mummy home. What about my daddy? Kiara asked. She had missed him so much that she couldn't sleep. Daddy promised to read me a bedtime story. That's why I'm still awake, she added, when the woman didn't respond immediately. Jennifer took a deep breath, silently asking herself, God, can I really do this? She forced a smile and gently said, Baby, your daddy isn't home right now, but he will be back tomorrow. Tiara seemed satisfied with the answer, but Winnie wasn't convinced. What about my mummy? She asked. She's in the car, Nurse Jennifer replied, then signaled the gateman to help carry the sleeping Angela inside. The gateman nodded and helped Nurse Jennifer carry Angela to her room, with the two little girls following closely behind. After tucking Angela into bed, Jennifer turned to the girls with a warm smile. How about you both sleep with your mummy tonight? Will my daddy be back tonight? Tiara asked again. Jennifer gently avoided the question and said, Everything will be fine by tomorrow. But for now, you should sleep with your mummy, okay? Thank you for bringing my mummy home, Winnie said softly as she climbed onto the bed with her sister. They snuggled close to their mother. I will be back tomorrow, Nurse Jennifer said before turning to leave. Winnie looked at her sleeping mother and felt deep in her heart that something was wrong. She had a bad feeling that something had happened to their daddy, but she hoped he wasn't dead. Do you think something happened to Daddy? Ciara asked. Winnie shook her head. Daddy's fine. Let's sleep now. Mummy will tell us everything tomorrow. By morning, news of the accident under the bridge, where a trailer's brakes failed and crashed into several cars, had spread everywhere. Pictures and videos were all over the internet. That was how James's family found out. They saw a video of Angela crying at the scene and immediately tried calling James, but his phone was unreachable. They kept calling Angela, but no one answered. Worried, they decided to go to their brother's house. James had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Their parents had passed away, and as the youngest and most successful among them, James had always done his best to support his family. James's 3 brothers never had a knack for business. Every business James helped them start eventually failed due to poor management. His 2 sisters were married, but their husbands weren't financially stable, though they were doing their best to support their families. Yet, James had always helped his siblings without complaining. However, after getting married to Angela, he decided to stop assisting them financially. He wanted to focus on his own family, believing he had already done enough for his siblings. What James didn't realize was that this decision made his brothers and sisters resent Angela. Though they never showed their anger openly, for fear of upsetting James, deep down, they blamed Angela, believing she had turned their brother against them. Early in the morning, James' 3 brothers stormed his house. Emeka, the eldest, was in his early 50s. Henry, the second brother, was in his late 40s. And Bucci, the youngest, was in his late 30s. As soon as the gateman opened the gate for them, they marched inside, shouting at the top of their voices, "Angela! Angela! Where are you?" Their voices were so loud that they woke Angela and her daughter from sleep. Angela was confused about how she ended up in her bedroom. She clearly remembered crying at the hospital, so how did she get home? "Mummy, good morning," Winnie greeted as she woke up from the noise. Only Chara was still asleep since she had stayed up late the night before. "Good morning, baby," Angela replied with a forced smile. "One Auntie Jennifer brought you back last night," Winnie said as she noticed her mother's confusion. "Auntie Jennifer?" Angela repeated, even more confused because she didn't remember hearing the nurse's name. "She's a nurse." "Oh," Angela nodded in understanding. Just then, a loud voice came from downstairs. "Angela, how can you sleep after killing our brother, your husband?" Angela immediately got out of bed, anger rising inside her as she headed for the door. The events of yesterday flashed through her mind, but just as she reached the door, she remembered her daughter still on the bed and turned back. "Mummy, is Daddy really dead?" Winnie asked hesitantly. Angela opened her arms. "Come here." Winnie rushed into her embrace, sobbing quietly. "Your daddy was in an accident yesterday," Angela whispered. "Mummy is still in shock. I can't believe it yet." She wanted to stay upstairs with her children, but the loud voices of her husband's brothers left her no choice but to go downstairs. Before leaving, she told her daughter to stay upstairs. "There she is," Bucci shouted as soon as Angela appeared. "So, Angela, you have the nerve to sleep peacefully when our brother just died yesterday? I can't believe you're this heartless." The words cut deep, but Angela chose to stay calm and greeted them instead. "Good morning, uncles." "Good morning?" Henry scoffed angrily. "What is good about this morning, eh?" Henry, Let's all calm down and sit. Our younger brother just passed away. We need to discuss his burial arrangements, Emeka, the eldest, said. He was the most cunning of the three brothers. On the surface, he acted like a good man, but in reality, he was the mastermind behind their schemes. Deep down, he was the happiest about their brother's death. At least now, he could enjoy his late brother's wealth, and maybe even take his beautiful wife as a second wife, something he had secretly desired for a long time. Thank you, sir, Angela muttered in appreciation before taking a seat. The other brothers sat as well, though their expressions showed they were still dissatisfied. Angela then began explaining everything, how she had received the call about her husband's accident and how the nurse had brought her home the night before. It's sad that our brother left us this way, but we need to prepare for his burial. You must come to the village this week with your children so we can bury him. Due to the ghastly accident, he can't be allowed to stay long in the mortuary, Emeka said, after Angela finished her explanation. After the discussion, the men left, leaving Angela alone with her two children. 2 weeks later, after her husband's funeral, Angela and her children returned to the city. That was when reality truly sank in. She was now a young widow. The only person who stood by her was the head nurse, Ma'am Jennifer. Having experienced a similar loss, Jennifer visited Angela often, offering words of encouragement and support. Angela, who had once been full of life, was now just a shadow of herself. The vibrant, cheerful, and beautiful woman she used to be was gone, replaced by someone drowning in sorrow. Even her two children couldn't fill the emptiness her husband's death had left in her heart. One morning, after sending her children to school, Angela sat alone in the living room, crying and missing her husband. Suddenly, her husband's family barged into her home, his three brothers, their wives, and two sisters. They were all dressed in black and white, accompanied by a few village elders. Angela was surprised by their unexpected visit, but she welcomed them and was about to serve them something when Ada stopped her. "Hey, Angela, we're not here for refreshments. Come and sit down," Ada said. Still confused, Angela blinked slowly, then nodded and took her seat. Ada cleared her throat and began. "As we all know, my late brother James left behind a lot of investments and properties. According to our tradition, since he had no male child, his family is entitled to everything he owned. Elders, am I right?" "You're absolutely right, my daughter," one of the elders agreed. "Since James didn't have a male child, all his property rightfully belongs to his family." Angela looked at them all in shock and let out a scoff of disbelief. "I don't understand what's happening here. My husband died barely 2 weeks ago, and all you care about is his property? My God, are you even his family?" She placed her hand on her head and stood up. "You know what? I want all of you out of my house right now." "Which house?" Bucci snapped angrily. "Angela, have you lost your mind? Sit down and keep quiet. You think we don't know you had a hand in our brother's death, just so you could keep all his wealth for yourself? My goodness! How could you even think of such a terrible thing? Bucci, how dare you speak so badly about my husband?" Angela fired back angrily. "Angela, shut up and sit down! Don't insult my husband!" Bucci's wife snapped, her voice filled with anger. They were all jealous of James's wealth and couldn't wait to take over his comfortable home. "Is this what you call a husband?" Angela scoffed. "A man who couldn't even wait for his brother to rest in peace before chasing after his wealth. What about me and my children?" "Which children?" Sandra, the second daughter, sneered, looking at Angela with disdain. "How do we even know those girls are really my brothers?" Angela stared at them in shock and disbelief. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She didn't want to believe it. Angela, my daughter, calm down, one of the elders said, clearing his throat. We understand that this is difficult for you, but we are only here to follow tradition. If you... Ichi, what kind of nonsense tradition is that? Angela snapped, cutting him off. She was already frustrated with everything. I have children with my husband, and they are still so young. If you take everything from me in the name of tradition, how am I supposed to take care of them? There is another solution to this, the elder continued calmly, as if Angela hadn't interrupted him. Angela raised an eyebrow in suspicion, but stayed quiet, waiting to hear what he had to say. The second option is for your husband's eldest brother to take you as his second wife. God forbid! Angela shouted. Ichi, how could you even suggest such a terrible thing? My husband was just buried 2 weeks ago. For Christ's sake, don't you people have a conscience? Angela looked around at the family her husband had loved so much. James had done everything he could for them, and they had benefited greatly from his generosity while he was alive. Now that he was gone, she couldn't believe they were treating his family this way. Uncle Emeka, even you? She asked, tears in her eyes. How can you do this to your own brother's family? Angela, my hands are tied, Emeka said, pretending to be helpless. This is tradition. It didn't start with our family, and it won't end with us. But to keep the peace, we will leave today and return in a week. We just wanted to inform you so you can prepare and gather your husband's property. If you cooperate, we will allow you and your daughters to stay in this house. Can you hear yourself? If I cooperate, you'll let me stay in the house. But how will I take care of my children? Angela asked in disbelief. We've said all we came to say. Elders, let's go, Emeka replied. Angela watched them leave, then collapsed onto the floor as fresh tears streamed down her face. From the way they spoke, she could tell they were serious. The worst part was that her husband hadn't left a will. No one ever expected something like this to happen, and she knew nothing about his business. James had always handled everything himself, not wanting to burden her with work matters. She had never asked, and now she regretted it deeply. If only she had known. What are you doing on the floor? Ma'am Jennifer asked as she walked in and saw Angela sitting there. She had just finished her night shift and decided to stop by before heading home. Why are you still crying? She asked, helping Angela up onto the sofa. Angela sniffled and hugged her. Over the past few weeks, she had come to rely on the older woman for support. Mom Jennifer always went out of her way to comfort her. After crying for a few minutes, Angela wiped her tears and explained everything that had just happened with her husband's family. My goodness, how can they be so cruel to their late brother's wife? Ma'am Jennifer asked after listening to Angela's story. She was silent for a moment before asking, So, what are you going to do now? Angela shook her head. Auntie, I have no idea. My husband didn't leave a will, and I don't even know anything about his business. Then you learn, Mom Jennifer said gently. If you don't know anything about it, it's not too late to start. But how? Angela asked, confused. Ma'am Jennifer looked at her for a moment and smiled. My dear, you need to fight. Crying won't solve anything. If you want to win this battle, you have to be strong and fight for your children. But I have no one to help me, Angela whispered. And you don't need anyone, Angela. You are enough, Ma'am Jennifer said firmly. And I will be here to help you in any way I can. But remember, these men who are already thinking about your husband's wealth just weeks after his death are capable of anything. You need to prepare yourself for the battle ahead. Angela stayed silent, thinking about Ma'am Jennifer's words. But deep down, she was scared. James's brothers might not be great at business, but they had connections. She knew that if they got control of her husband's business, she would lose everything. She couldn't let that happen. Her husband had worked too hard to build his business, and she wouldn't allow anyone to waste it. She had to protect his legacy and her children's future. Auntie Jennifer, you're right. I have to fight with everything in me, Angela said, wiping her tears and speaking with determination. Seeing her resolve, Mom Jennifer smiled warmly. That's the spirit, my dear. My husband, there's something I don't understand, but I decided to ask you when we got home, Dinma said as soon as they arrived. Dinma was a dark-skinned woman in her mid-30s, of average appearance. She had 2 sons with Emeka and wasn't one to seek trouble, but if trouble came her way, she knew how to handle it. Emeka unbuttoned his shirt, settled onto the sofa, and picked up the remote, switching to his favorite sports channel to watch soccer. What don't you understand? He asked, his eyes fixed on the screen. Dinma sat beside him and continued. The elders mentioned you taking Angela, your brother's wife, as a second wife. I didn't want to say anything there so I wouldn't cause a scene, but were you serious about that? Or were you just joking? What part of that sounded like a joke to you, woman? Emeka turned to his wife with an indifferent expression. Let me watch my soccer in peace. You're lying, Emeka. You're lying. Dinma flared up in anger. There's no way I'll sit here and watch you take another wife. You heard the elders? It's tradition. Spare me that nonsense, Dinma snapped, standing up angrily. What tradition? Do you think I don't know? This is just a scheme between you and the elders to take over everything that belonged to your brother? And you were in support of it, Emeka added casually, his eyes still fixed on the TV. Just because I agreed to the plan doesn't mean I agree to you taking a second wife. Why didn't your brother suggest it? Why does it have to be you? If you can't accept it, then go back to your parents' house. I'm taking a second wife, and that's final. Not in this house! Emeka, I'm warning you, it won't happen. Irritated by his wife's words, Emeka let out a deep sigh, stood up without saying another word, and walked out of the house while Dinma continued shouting after him. You can walk out all you want, but you'll still come back to meet me here. I will never accept Angela as a co-wife. Never. 3 days later, following Ma'am Jennifer's advice, Angela set out to visit her husband's business. Traditionally, she was expected to mourn her husband for nearly 3 months before leaving the house, but the circumstances left her with no choice. When she arrived at the first shop, she was shocked to find it locked. She immediately called her husband's manager to ask why, and his response angered her even more. Madam, it was Oga Henry's instruction, the manager explained. He told me to lock up the shop. What? The audacity! Angela fumed. Manager, I demand that you bring me the shop keys this instant. Madam, that's the problem, the manager sighed. Oga Henry took the keys from me and warned me not to return until further notice. Angela ended the call, knowing there was nothing she could do at the moment. Frustrated but determined, she got into her car and drove to her husband's second shop, which wasn't far from the first. When she arrived, she was surprised to find the shop open, but with unfamiliar workers inside. As she attempted to step in, a male sales assistant blocked her path. Excuse me, ma'am, what do you want? He asked. Angela's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you out of your mind? This is my husband's business. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I've never seen you here before. The Oga who hired us today gave strict instructions not to allow anyone who isn't a customer inside, the young man replied firmly, refusing to let her through. Angela clenched her fists. You and your so-called boss must be insane. Who is this Oga of yours? Oga Emeka, the boy answered casually. Emeka told you to lock me out of my husband's business? Angela asked in shock. The young man simply shrugged. He had no interest in family disputes. All he cared about was following orders. Fuming, Angela pulled out her phone and dialed Emeka's number. He picked up almost immediately. "My dear, I didn't expect you to call so soon. Have you agreed to my terms and conditions?" he asked smugly. Angela's grip on the phone tightened. "Emeka, I see that you and your brothers are determined to take over everything my husband worked hard to build, but I promise you, it won't work." Emeka chuckled. "Oh, so now you call me by my name? That's fine. Soon enough, you'll be calling me your husband." "Over my dead body, Emeka! Over my dead body!" Angela shouted. "How dare you take over my husband's business? Replace all his workers and lock me out. This is pure wickedness." Emeka laughed on the other end of the line, unfazed by her anger. "Angela, my dear, stop fighting it. All of this could be yours if you just agree to be my wife. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. It's tradition." "That so-called tradition will be the death of you," Angela snapped. "If you know what's good for you, open those shops to me now, or you won't like what happens next." But before she could say more, the call disconnected. Angela stood there, staring at the bustling shop that once belonged to her husband, now run by strangers. It felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. After what felt like forever, she checked the time and realized she had to pick up her children from school. Wiping her tears, she got into her car and drove off, crying the whole way. Everything was happening too fast. She didn't even know where to begin. James's family had given her a week to decide, yet before the week was over, they had already taken control of 2 of his shops. Lost in thought, Angela almost drove past her children's school. The large signboard ahead snapped her back to reality. She quickly pulled over and took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment to calm herself. She couldn't let her children see her upset. They were already struggling with the loss of their father. Instead of going inside, she took out her phone and called their teachers, politely asking if they could bring the girls outside. Understanding her situation, they agreed. A few minutes later, Winnie and her younger sister, Ciara, walked out, escorted by their teachers. Angela quickly put on a smile as they approached. "Good afternoon, Mummy," the girls greeted, hopping into the car. "Did you have a good day at school?" Angela asked, turning to them with a warm smile. Winnie nodded as she fastened her sister's seatbelt. But before she could respond, Kiara eagerly spoke up first. "School was boring, Mum," Kiara sighed. "I kept seeing my friends being picked up by their fathers, and I still can't believe I don't have a father anymore." "Shh," Winnie nudged her sister gently. It was hard for her too, but she knew their mother was suffering the most. Every night, she could hear her mother crying. Even as a child, she understood how strong the bond between her parents had been. She had learned that losing a partner was one of the worst pains, so she was trying to be strong, for her mother's sake. "Mummy, are you crying?" Winnie asked softly. "No, I'm not," Angela replied, keeping her eyes fixed on the road. She had lost her own parents at a young age, so she knew exactly how much pain her children were going through. "Ciara," Angela called her daughter gently, after a few moments of silence. "Daddy may not be here physically, but he's always with us. He's watching over us and keeping us safe from up there. As long as we keep remembering him, he will never forget us. We were the most important people in his life." Ciara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want him to watch us from there. I want him here with us." Winnie reached out to comfort her sister, but before she knew it, she was crying too. No matter how much she tried to stay strong, she missed her daddy just as much. Angela's heart ached for her daughters. Wanting to lift their spirits, she forced a smile. "Girls, how about we grab some ice cream before heading home?" They didn't respond, but she wasn't ready to give up. If we keep crying, Daddy will be sad wherever he is, and he won't be able to rest in peace, she said softly. You know he always wanted us to be happy. So why don't we get some ice cream and think about all the good times we had with him? And who knows, he might even visit us in our dreams. Really? Tiara asked, her eyes lighting up with hope. Angela nodded. Of course. Daddy loves us so much that he wouldn't want us to be sad. If you wipe your tears, he will definitely come to play with you in your dreams. Then I better stop crying, Tiara said, quickly wiping her tears before reaching over to wipe her sister's. Winnie, let's stop crying, or Daddy won't visit us in our dreams. Winnie nodded. All right. Deep down, she knew their mother was just trying to comfort them, but a part of her still wanted to believe it. Seeing her father again, even in a dream, would be the best thing ever. Now that she had managed to calm her daughters, Angela wiped her own tears and forced herself to stay strong. She took them to get ice cream before heading home. Once home, she helped them bathe, change into their comfortable clothes, and tuck them into bed, hoping that their wish would come true. Mummy, are you sure we'll see Daddy? Tiara asked, her big, expectant eyes looking up at her. Angela smiled and kissed her forehead. Of course. Sweet dreams, baby. She gently pulled the duvet over her daughter and watched as her little eyes fluttered shut. Mummy, you should also try to get some sleep. Our auntie said everything will be fine with time, Winnie said, trying to comfort her mother. Angela nodded. All right, baby. I will. She kissed Winnie's forehead before quietly leaving their room. As soon as she entered her own room, she picked up her phone and dialed the family lawyer's number. When Angela arrived at their family lawyer's office the next day, the lawyer wasn't available, but his secretary, who was familiar with Angela, welcomed her inside. You can sit in his office and wait for him. My boss is meeting with a client outside the firm, the young secretary said politely. All right, thank you, Angela replied with a small smile. The secretary observed Angela's dull expression for a moment and felt a pang of sympathy. Dressed in mourning clothes, Angela looked pale and worn out. Though the secretary didn't know exactly what she was going through, it was clear she was struggling. Can I get you anything? Maybe some tea while you wait, she offered hesitantly. Angela, noticing the way the secretary was watching her, raised an eyebrow in question. Understanding her concern, she shook her head slightly. She hadn't had an appetite since yesterday, and she didn't want to upset her stomach. No, I'm fine, but I appreciate the kind gesture, she said softly. The secretary nodded with a smile. If you say so, then I'll leave you alone. With that, she walked away, leaving Angela alone in the office. Angela stared blankly into space, lost in thought. Just last month, she had been living happily with her family, but now her husband was gone, and her world had suddenly turned empty. In a coffee shop near his law firm, Mr. Ayomide, a middle-aged, slim-built man dressed in corporate attire, sat across from Mr. Henry, James's older brother. I was told a client wanted to see me, Mr. Ayomide began, in an indifferent tone. He was clearly not pleased to see Mr. Henry and made no effort to hide it. Mr. Henry smiled. I am a client and also your friend. Mr. Ayomide let out a cold smile, picked up his glass of coffee, and took a sip. I don't make friends with my clients. Why are you here? Speak quickly. I'm a busy man. Well, that makes two of us. Mr. Henry took a sip of his drink, then continued in a relaxed tone. I have a sweet deal for you, one that would be beneficial to you. Then get on with it. My time is limited. Mr. Henry nodded and continued. You know my brother James is no more, and from what I heard, you handle most of his properties and investments. Already anticipating where the conversation was headed, Mr. Ayomide remained silent. He knew the family would come for James's wealth, but he wanted to hear their plan first. James didn't have a male child, Mr. Henry went on. So according to tradition, all his wealth should return to his family. But his wife is being a bit stubborn, and I believe she'll be coming to see you soon. We need you to stand with us, maybe draft a plan or find a way to ensure we win. In return, you'll be heavily rewarded. A complicated flicker of emotions crossed Mr. Iomide's face as he considered the best way to handle this situation. James had been good to him while he was alive, but now that he was gone, there was no benefit in staying loyal to a dead man. Mr. Iomide was a greedy man who cared only about money, yet he was exceptionally skilled at his job. That was why people continued to seek his services despite his reputation. At the moment, he was in desperate need of a large sum of money to pay off a bank loan. The deadline had already passed, and if he failed to make the payment soon, his law firm would be shut down, something he couldn't afford to risk. "So, what do you say to my proposal?" Mr. Henry asked, breaking the silence when he received no response. Although he needed the money, Mr. Iomide maintained his composure and replied expressionlessly, "Why do you think I would agree to this evil act? Who still believes in such outdated traditional nonsense these days?" He scoffed. Unfazed by his words, Mr. Henry simply smiled. "I know you, Mr. Ayo. You're a greedy man who only cares about money. And for one good reason, I heard you're drowning in debt." Mr. Aomide raised an eyebrow. "You do hear a lot of things, don't you?" Mr. Henry shrugged. "When it comes to business, I make sure to be thorough." "Yet you wasted several businesses that your late brother set up for you," Mr. Iomide mocked. Mr. Henry's expression darkened. He despised being reminded of his failures. Why was James the only one who had succeeded in their family while he struggled? But rather than dwell on those bitter thoughts, he forced a smile and replied, "My brother James became who he was because of the sacrifices our family made. So I see no reason why some bitch from nowhere should come and take over everything, along with her daughters, who we're not even sure belong to my brother." Mr. Iomide remained silent for a moment, deep in thought. Then he nodded. "All right, how much am I getting from this deal?" Hearing that, a wide smile spread across Mr. Henry's face. "Now you're talking. I need you to compile a full list of James's properties. Of course, I already have a list, but I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Win this case for us, and you'll have a building of your own. My brother was secretly constructing a 5-bedroom duplex in an estate. He planned to gift it to his wife on her birthday. It's almost completed. But now, it's yours if you secure this win for us." The offer was tempting, but Mr. Aomide was a skeptical man. He never took anything at face value. He needed proof. He remained calm, studying Mr. Henry carefully. "Where's the evidence?" he asked after a brief silence. Mr. Henry smiled, took out his phone, and played a video of the house. "I was helping my brother build this house in secret. To show you how serious I am, I even brought the original land documents along with a photocopy," he explained. Reaching for a brown envelope beside him, he handed it to Mr. Iomide. "These are the land documents. Once you win this case for us, you can change the ownership to your name. It will be signed over to you that same day." Mr. Iomide took the envelope and skimmed through its contents. Though inwardly pleased, he kept his expression neutral. Owning this building meant he could make a significant amount of money by renting it out, something he had never imagined happening so soon. "I'll take this document home and think over your proposal," he said, slipping the photocopy into his pocket. He knew the original would only be handed over once he agreed to the deal. "I'll be waiting for your good news then," Mr. Henry replied with a smug smile. Sure, I need to go now. See you later. Hopefully, Mr. Ayomide said before walking away. Just as he stepped outside, his phone rang. Glancing at the caller ID, he saw Angela's name flash on the screen. Clearing his throat, he answered. Hello, ma'am? Mr. Ayomide, I need to know when you'll be back at your office. I've been waiting for a while. Angela's voice came through the line. Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I was meeting with a client, but I'm on my way back now. All right. I hope I didn't interrupt your meeting. Not at all. Just give me a few minutes and I'll be there, he said before ending the call. He ended the call, got into his car, and sped off. His gaze flickered to the document resting on the passenger seat. A frown crossed his face as he exhaled deeply. Can I really betray James for a building? But then, his debts were choking him, and being loyal wasn't going to pay them off.